There's something very surprising. If you invested into Bitcoin roughly 7 years ago, a bit less than 7 years ago, and you compare this to an investment into technology stocks, into the Nasdaq 100, you actually did not outperform with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is perceived as way more risky, as in the prices go up and down way more violently than for technology stocks, but that additional risk, at least in the last roughly 7 years, did not get compensated. Now, I talked about this in a prior video on this channel, and a lot of people thought that I had my data incorrect. But I want to show this one more time. Have a look at this. This is the Bitcoin price relative to the Nasdaq. So we're dividing now the Bitcoin price by the number of points in the Nasdaq 100. And when we look at this peak over here in December of 2017, when Bitcoin's price was at around 20K, and we compare this to the current price, we see pretty much zero outperformance of Bitcoin relative to the Nasdaq 100. So let's take this data point in the middle of December of 2017 and let's have a look at the Nasdaq. The Nasdaq, so US technology stocks, during that period increased by roughly 200%. Bitcoin, on the other hand, had its massive crashes and subsequent rallies, but also it increased pretty much to the same degree, roughly 200%. So had you bought at peak prices in 2017 and had you held up to today, you would have returned the same compared to just buying Nasdaq 100 ETFs. Now there's an interesting effect here because usually there is very little connection across asset classes. So for example, the property market can crash, but technology stocks can stay up. Or cryptocurrencies might rally, but say precious metals don't move in any direction. So there's a lot of correlation within an asset class. So when Bitcoin goes up, then Ethereum goes up as well. Or when gold goes up, silver goes up as well. But there is not too much correlation across asset classes. So one asset class might rally, the other one might not. And it appears on the surface of it that there's still quite a bit of disconnect between technology stocks and cryptocurrencies. But I'm not sure if that's still the case. What we've got at the top is again the Bitcoin price. What we've got at the bottom is the correlation coefficient to the Nasdaq 100. And this is oscillating quite a bit between +1 and -1. This is what we want to see if there's very little correlation. So this would again say it's great to own both Bitcoin and technology stocks because there is a diversification benefit in a portfolio. So in other words, Bitcoin might crash and technology stocks might stay up, or vice versa, right? Technology stocks might crash and Bitcoin might still stay where it is. That's what's implied with this wiggly line. However, there is an interesting effect. When we change this from daily ticks to monthly ticks, and we zoom in a little bit, what we're seeing is that in the last 4 years, the correlation coefficient of monthly returns of Bitcoin relative to the Nasdaq 100 were pretty high, somewhere between 0.9 and 0.6, which would indicate that the two assets move in the same direction at the same time, at least on a monthly time frame. This needs to go to 1 million or March buyers now will make millions. This is how you get the clicks on YouTube, but this is not how you beat the market. To beat the market in crypto, you need to be better informed than the rest. You need to be better skilled than the rest. You need to do better blockchain analytics. You need to track other people's wallets and know what is the smart money doing. It's the boring educational content that forms skill that doesn't perform so well on YouTube though. That's why I created the premium membership. Feel free to check it out. We are tracking influencer wallets to find out what they are buying before promoting this on YouTube. We've got a lot of tutorials to help with on-chain analytics, to help with wallet discovery. And of course, there are also plenty of chats where we help each other and also one-on-one conversations with me. So I'm messaging every premium member one-on-one directly. Once you're joining, you will get a message from me and you have the opportunity to directly pick my brain. Feel free to check it out, thebitcointrader.com, link is down below. So the connection isn't very strong. On a daily time frame, we don't see it. On a weekly time frame, we don't see it. On a monthly time frame, there might be a connection. We can't say for certain because, of course, the sample size is not very large. Still, this is interesting, right? Technology stocks might be moving in the grand scheme of things in the same direction as Bitcoin. And when we look at the return of Bitcoin relative to the Nasdaq 100, and we see how this also might tend to approach similar levels, maybe Bitcoin is becoming something like a technology stock. It's not necessarily in terms of investment numbers, that great of an outperformer anymore. Now, this is a bit of an unfair comparison because technology stocks long-term tend to outperform regular stocks. And Bitcoin was never really built in order to outperform tech stocks. Because when we don't compare Bitcoin with tech stocks, but we compare Bitcoin with the S&P 500, even if you bought at the worst time possible, a bit under 7 years ago, you still got some outperformance, 40% versus the S&P 500. Now, why was Bitcoin created? Bitcoin was created in order to protect against the ever-expanding money supply. So you might know about this, you might not know about this. The very first block that was ever mined for Bitcoin had an inscription on it that referenced to a Financial Times article where the banks got bailed out. So the banks gambled with all kinds of derivative instruments, with bets on the US property market, which then collapsed the equity of those banks, which then had to get bailed out by newly issued money. And so that's then where the big protest started, right? There's a privatization of gains, but in case there are losses, then the taxpayer has to pay those losses. The taxpayer, or in other words, the people that hold fiat currencies, because simply just the monetary base got expanded. And so the fairer comparison is to actually look at Bitcoin's price relative to the money supply. That's, I believe, the appropriate comparison. And that's where Bitcoin should at least keep pace. So let's look again at the end of 2017, the worst time you could have bought, a bit under 7 years ago. And yes, Bitcoin did outperform by roughly 2x during that time period. That's the chart I believe really matters. We have to continue to see Bitcoin at least keeping pace with the monetary supply expansion, which by the way is around 6.8% per annum. So this is where Bitcoin was born during the global financial crisis. Then came the massive monetary expansion. Here, by the way, is the COVID crash. Here, by the way, is the .com bubble. And so it's not really a problem that Bitcoin relative to the Nasdaq 100 isn't outperforming long-term anymore. Because again, this is cherry picking. Bitcoin isn't outperforming Nvidia for more than 10 years. Right? Since March of 2013, Nvidia stock performed the same as Bitcoin. But we're not holding Bitcoin in order to outperform every single stock on the planet. We are holding Bitcoin simply as a savings vehicle to protect us against this thing over here. The ever increasing money supply, USM2, again, which increases by roughly 6.8% per annum. The dollar loses its purchasing power because of more and more money that's been issued, that's been printed by the Federal Reserve. And we are very likely going to see more of that money coming very soon as interest rates go down. So the market currently expects that interest rates will be at a bit over 3% 1 year from now. And with those lower interest rates, we're very likely seeing more money supply. And the central question is, will Bitcoin continue to keep pace with that monetary expansion? I believe it will. If it's the first time here, feel free to subscribe. I publish videos regularly. Feel free to also give this a like. It helps the channel grow. In case you've got Telegram, then you're more than welcome to join us. The link is down below. Looking very much forward to chatting with you. Cheers.